yesterday, the Lunduke Journal published a story on Firefox's new terms of use that users must agree to if they want to use the once popular web browser. And those terms of use allow Mozilla, Firefox's parent company, to do pretty much anything they want with any data you use with Firefox. What you click, where you're physically located, what web pages you go to, what words you type, what files you upload, absolutely anything. It's rather extreme. After I reported on this, things absolutely exploded with people commenting on it all over the internet, millions of people seeing this news story and being relatively pissed off, to the point where I wonder how Mozilla survives this in light of all of the other struggles they've got going on right now. So we're going to go through some of what's happened over the last 24 hours with you now. Is some rather fun stuff here, including reactions from the CEO of Epic Games, Tim Sweeney. We got Brave's Brendan Eich talking in here, some YouTubers, plus this is a real thing that happened. Mozilla accidentally gave me access to one of their private Google Docs, but only for a moment. I'll go through all of that. So this all started yesterday. If the quick primer is that the new terms and use of Firefox state that, quote, when you upload or input information through Firefox, you hereby grant a non-exclusive royalty-free worldwide license to use that information, end quote. They then went on to explain throughout multiple documents, their privacy documents and whatnot, that information was everything that a person could input with or use related to a web browser, and their potential usage was widespread, including data farming, selling your data, using it for advertising purposes, and on and on and on. Obviously, people weren't too thrilled about that, especially when we started publishing additional details. I posted over on Twitter this little snippet, and I thought this was rather interesting. The last time that the Firefox account on X, on what used to be Twitter, posted to X was on January 28th, 1 month ago today, right? That's the last time they posted anything. On that day, they said, and I quote, "Imagine hating on us when we're literally just minding our own business and browsing the web," end quote. That was their last post. Flash forward 1 month later, and I post the GitHub change page where it shows that where they actually removed the following from their code, from their terms of use. There was a question in there, and it says, "Does Firefox sell your personal data?" Answer: nope, never have, never will, and we protect you from many of the advertisers who do. Firefox products are designed to protect your privacy. That's a promise. He just deleted that whole section. I love it. Exactly 1 month later, after they're like, hey, we're just minding our own business, browsing the web. Now they're like, let's go back and delete anything that ever said that we weren't going to sell people's data. Do you remember some years back when Google started removing all references to their old motto? Their old motto used to be Google, don't be evil, right? And they started removing those references everywhere. They're like, you know what? Maybe we do want to be a little evil. So Google started removing the don't be evil references. Well, now Firefox and Mozilla are doing the exact same thing, except in relation to selling data and data mining and invading your privacy, because now that's their business. Also, earlier today, 24-ish hours after this all started exploding and the internet started screaming at Mozilla and Firefox, why are you invading our privacy? Why are you stealing our data? Why are you no longer trying to protect our data? Mozilla posts on their official X account, this is the Mozilla account, Mozilla is investing in technologists, activists, and researchers who are radically shifting the tech ecosystem for the better. The cohorts for predictions for 2025 here. And then they provide a link to the bold predictions for the future of technology, insights from Mozilla's 2025 fellows. the very top of the page they link to on the Mozilla Foundation blog, the first prediction for the future is, this is totally straight-faced a real thing, VCs will face their privacy reckoning in 2025. 2025 will bring about several crucial shifts in the global surveillance technology market. The AI surveillance industry remains heavily driven by profit and power consolidation and is projected to reach $234 billion by 2027. Monitoring continues to be embedded in our communication tools, often disguised as features or improvements, but are in fact functioning as sophisticated surveillance systems. End quote. What's great is Mozilla's been trying to do a little bit of damage control here, saying, oh, all this spying we're doing on you and data collecting of you, we're doing it because we need to in order to provide features and improvements to Firefox. And then they come out with their predictions for 2025 are that there's going to be a day of reckoning for anyone spying on people in the name of features and improvements. So I'm wondering if the people inside Mozilla talked to each other before they made all these changes, because they're really at odds here. And this is great. This is great. So I was digging around, and actually some of this got sent to me. The link of this got sent to me by a fan of the Lunduke Journal. So thank you. I forgot your name, but you know who you are. The terms of service was updated on Mozilla's GitHub page, Mozilla/Bedrock, in that repository. Earlier today, someone published to that repository a task which said list of changes that didn't make the 226 launch. And then it included a link to a Google Doc. Now, what this is changes that they wanted to make to the terms of service, right? The disastrous terms of service that everyone's been screaming about for the last 24 hours. There were changes they wanted to make, but didn't make the cut. Right? Now, what could those be? What could those possibly be? Is it just, some wording and verbiage changes? Were they going to go even further than they went? Like, what are the details there? I mean, this could be incredibly crazy, right? Well, as soon as that got published, within moments, it got locked down. The link to the Google document got removed, deleted entirely, and a comment got put in there that said no public access. Okay, because they accidentally were giving public access to all of the changes that they wanted to get into the terms of use, but maybe didn't feel like would go over that well, I'm guessing. No, I got the link, though. I got the link to that Google Doc. Thank you. And I tried to load it up, but it was locked, right? It was a private Google Doc. In order to use it, you had to request permissions. So I thought, why not, right? So I loaded up the Google Doc on the docs.google.com webpage, and it said, hey, do you want to request permission? Yeah, I do. Boink, clicked that request permission to access the Google Doc button, and I thought, there's no way. There's no way they're going to give me permissions to see the sensitive internal information from within inside Mozilla. Everyone there knows at Mozilla knows who I am. I am the devil for them, right? There's no way they're going to do that. Moments later, boing, you've got mail. Oh my, what is this? Stephanie Hobson at Mozilla.com has invited you to edit the following spreadsheets, the terms of use text changes. Oh my word. I have never clicked on an email and on a link in that email so darned fast. Like, as soon as it came in, I was not expecting it. Like, I was eating breakfast this morning. Click. By the time they had given me access to the data, and I, within seconds of receiving the notification, clicking that open, boom, they realized their error and removed my access. You need permission. Ask the owner for access or switch to an account with permissions. Curses. If I had been like maybe a second faster, I might have had it. And if I would have gotten in for at least a second, screenshot, I would have had it all. Oh, darn it. If anyone with Inside Mozilla has access to this screen, this Google document, I would love to see it. Maybe there's nothing crazy in there, but it sounds like there might be. I mean, because come on, the stuff that Mozilla published was insane. The stuff they published is getting them just absolutely just crucified across the internet. I can only imagine what is in the document that they felt like couldn't be published. I would love to see it. So if anyone wants to see it, go to lunduke.com. There's some links there for how you can anonymously send me information, including files and emails and whatnot. I always protect my sources. Always. If you want to reveal to me who you are, I will never reveal you as a source to anyone else. But I would love to see that document. Also, why is Mozilla, the open source Firefox company, using Google documents to do their internal planning for their terms of use, which they're using to strip away rights and privacy from their users? Huh. Does that anyone else go, huh, that's interesting? And then things really started exploding. So over on X is where stuff really kicked into high gear. Obviously, I published this story everywhere, but nowhere did it explode like X. On X, over the last 24 hours, millions of people have seen this story, been responding to this story. It started trending over on X. Multiple people started doing videos based on it or posts based on it. Those started trending, and almost all of them led back to that original video that I posted sometime yesterday morning. It went crazy, right? And some pretty great memes flowed out of it, and some of them were pretty funny. So I shared a couple of them because why not? But where it really started to get interesting was when you started watching people, high-profile nerds, starting to chime in on it. And some of them were the usual folks that would chime in on such a thing. Grums, who was on our show, Mark Kern, one of the old Blizzard guys, said, this is why I've used Brave for years. Mozilla is asserting rights over anything you upload. Couldn't agree more. Brendan Eich, the one-time CEO of Mozilla, the inventor of JavaScript, I mean, the man, simply posted in all caps with some spaces in there, WTF. and then the quote I quoted earlier about how when you upload or input information through Firefox, you hereby grant us a non-exclusive rights, blah, 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 blah. Because that's crazy. It's absolutely insane. We saw a bunch of YouTubers and Twitch streamers jumped on it. The Theo and the Primogen and whatnot. A bunch of them started jumping into it, and they started trending too because this is a big giant story. And then Tim Sweeney from Epic Games, who is a legend in his own right. He hopped in, and I wanted to include his viewpoint here on this because he's friggin' Tim Sweeney. He said, quote, the video is deceptive, referring to the show that I produced. The license says that when you type stuff, the program can use the stuff you typed to do the thing you asked it to do. This is what programs ordinarily do, but nowadays lawyers tend to advise companies to say it explicitly, end quote. Okay, Tim's a little wrong there, so I responded to Tim. This is incorrect, Tim Sweeney. The Firefox terms explicitly state, quote, when you upload or input information through Firefox, you hereby grant us a non-exclusive, royalty-free, worldwide license to use that information, end quote. Mozilla also outlines how it can use all user data, including clicks, location, uploaded data, etc., by sending it to any third party they wish, including use in advertising. Side note, big fan of your work, Tim. ZZT was, nay is, absolutely awesome. If you've never played ZZT before, it's absolutely fantastic. One of the great character ASCII-based game systems, game engines of the 80s. Really worth your time to play around with. It's got a whole scripting language. You can build games in ZZT. It was awesome. Anyway, Tim created that. It was great. Tim later responded. He disagreed politely with my assessment as well. But this is creating a conversation, which is good. We should be able to be talking about everything that's going on here. Now, one of the things I found interesting about all of this was who was covering it and how, and who wasn't covering it, right? Over the last, 24 hours, we've seen certain people jump onto it. I showed you a couple of them just now, and there's been more as well. But there's been a few people that have really jumped onto it, and that's been great. Some of those who covered it did so using screenshots of my video cropped to not include me. Which I thought was a little weird. So I posted this over on X. I'm just going to read it to you now, just because it sums up how I feel about that. Yes, I know that multiple outlets are taking Lunduke Journal reporting and copying it in some way, even including zoomed in screenshots of my videos and almost verbatim copies of my wording and research without credit. You know what? I am 100% okay with that. Sure, it would be nice if some sort of credit was given to my original reporting, but I'm extremely happy to see many of these stories, which the Lunduke Journal has been alone in reporting on, in some cases for years, finally getting broader attention. There was a time when the Lunduke Journal would publish a deep investigative piece around the financial records and tax returns of Mozilla, and not one other tech news outlet, podcaster, or YouTuber would be willing to touch the story. They feared the backlash of attacking Mozilla. They feared being seen as right-wing. The Lunduke Journal, through all of that, stood alone. Now you fast forward to today. After years of the Lunduke Journal shining a light on the shady practices of the Firefox maker, the rest of the tech journalists and commentators are now comfortable, after all that time, finally covering at least some part of the dirty aspects of Mozilla. People are seeing the truth. And this is a very good thing, even if they don't give any credit to the Lunduke Journal. And I mentioned this because I've been getting a lot of emails and messages and direct private messages and all sorts of things from people mentioning that they noticed that, some shows and some people on Twitter and some whatnot, they're just kind of cropping me out and including some of my screenshots and whatnot, which is a little bit funny. I just wanted to reply to all that all at once. Now, one of the other things I've noticed, though, is who isn't covering this at all. ZDNet, The Register, and so many others aren't even, as of this recording, mentioning this. That's fascinating. And those who have mentioned this, those who are covering this, which kudos to the people who are leaving out the vast majority of the dirty, shady, sinister, weird stuff that Mozilla has been up to just in the last few months, never mind the last several years. And all of those weird practices from Mozilla really add up, and it paints an incredibly vivid picture of the organization, and it puts their current activities, their current terms of use, and violating people's privacies into a very clear contrast with very clear reasoning as to why they're doing it, right? It provides that context. It's very necessary to have the extra information. For example, just to give you a few examples of the stories that the Lunduke Journal's been reporting that no one is touching, but that is vital to understanding what is happening at Mozilla with this new terms of service, with their move away from respecting people's privacy. The first one, there has been an internal power struggle going on within Mozilla for the last few years. I mean, arguably you could say going back to, Brendan Eich's tenure when he was forced out for his ideological beliefs. But currently, just zooming in on the very current time frame, Mozilla is currently being sued by the person who was being set up to be the new CEO, but got ousted in a very Game of Thrones power struggle style by an incoming board of directors at Mozilla who simply did not want him around. Now, his lawsuit is going to a jury trial. It's going to be happening later this year. In fact, I believe the The jury trial is scheduled for October of this year. So we'll see if Mozilla even really exists in a recognizable way come October. But it's going to a jury trial. And this is all happening at the same time as Mozilla is facing the loss of 80% or more of its revenue in the coming months. That's really likely going to happen because of the United States DOJ's lawsuit against Google. Now, if that happens, Mozilla's in dire straits. They need to find other ways to bring in money. And so they've been working very, very hard to kind of recreate themselves. They're not a browser company anymore. They're not about being a foundation that pushes free and open web anymore. There's not enough profit in that for them if they can't get a big company to subsidize their work like they've been doing the last several years. So what have they been doing? They've been shifting to becoming a political activism organization, not about web browsing, not about web technologies, not about freedom of speech or protecting privacy, but about, and I'm going to quote this because I've quoted it before and it's not getting quoted by enough other people and it's too insane to not quote. Quote, feminist, decolonial, LGBTQIA plus climate justice using artificial intelligence, end quote. That is a cornerstone of Mozilla's future. That's the part of their future direction. They held a big party at a luxury resort in Africa, in Zambia, specifically to promote Marxism and anti-capitalism, including that giant word salad of nonsense that I just quoted you. And that is very much perceived as the future of Mozilla. They're stating this over and over again. They're being very upfront about it. This is their future, so much so that they paid a very expensive design firm, I believe out of the UK, to come up with a brand new rebranding of Mozilla and Firefox, so that they're not a web browser company. They're not a web engine company. They're not a web platforms company. They don't do any of that. What they are now is, quoting them, a global crew of activists, end quote. A global crew of activists. So what you have here now, think about this in terms of this new terms of use that Firefox has, where they can take anything you put into Firefox, anything you upload, any picture, any video, any sound clip, any keystroke, any click, anything, and use it however they want. That's their terms of use. Well, whatever you think of how they're going to use it, they made a very clear, careful choice to make sure they could do whatever they want with it. And you're giving that to a global crew of activists, crew of activists that has said repeatedly that one of their core missions is to do, quote, more than deplatforming, end quote, of conservatives, Republicans, and President Trump. That's one of their stated goals. When President Trump was forced off of Twitter back before Elon Musk took it over, Mozilla celebrated and said they wanted to do more than that, more than deplatforming. They wanted to push conservatives off the internet. Because what's more than deplatforming someone? Well, what do you do if you've already gotten rid of conservatives on all websites, YouTube and social media and whatnot? Well, the next step is to make sure they're not allowed on the internet at all. That's the only thing that's left to be more than deplatforming, is getting rid of people's ability to connect on the internet. That's their stated goal. And now they are rebranded as a global crew of activists that take government taxpayer money. They got a $1 million grant this last year, and I have been having a heck of a time getting a straight answer from Mozilla and exactly how they're using that money. You can go look into my reporting on it. I published this on February 26th. How is Mozilla spending that $1 million from US taxpayers? We looked into what it seems like they might be using it on, but I can't get anyone at Mozilla to actually tell me how they're using it, what they're planning to accomplish. In fact, so far, they're stonewalling every request I've put in to simply see the proposal that they gave to the National Science Foundation in order to get that $1 million of my money, of your money. They don't want us to know how it's being spent. Why? So they're getting government money. They're getting taxpayer federal money. They're a global crew of activists with a stated goal of silencing and removing specific political leaning people off of the internet. They're having constant chaos and turmoil internally where they continually are ousting people one after another. They hold crazy Marxist and anti-capitalist events. And now, after all that's said and done, they're saying, hey, if you use Firefox, by the way, Firefox is now an advertising platform. We can do anything we want with all of your information. Did we mention that we own an advertising company and we're a data broker now? Yeah, we're going to do all of that. Do you really trust them with your data? Because they've gone far beyond anything that Google has done in terms of violating the privacy of people, right? Google's an advertising company, right? They do Google AdWords and AdSense, and they make a web browser, right? And they tie all that together. And there's a lot of concerns about how Google uses people's data for advertising. A lot of concerns. Well, now add on top of that, being rebranded in terms of Mozilla as a global crew of activists with a stated goal of silencing and taking away the free speech rights of half of the country. That's where we're at with Mozilla. What's amazing to me is that the tech journalists are not asking any of the questions about this. They're not digging deep into any of these topics. Not one other tech news outlet has looked into their IRS records. I have. And it's crazy. You go look. I did a show and an article series called, was it Firefox Money? About 3 years ago. It was great. It's fantastic. You'll like it very much. It was the best article. And through that, you start to realize that even years ago, they were spending a tremendous amount of money from donors and whatnot on really crazy, extremely political, really, really racist, psycho DEI stuff. And no journalist asks about this. None. Even today, when multiple like YouTubers and podcasters and a handful of journalists are finally picking this up, they're finally grabbing onto this story. Thank you. They're only grabbing onto about 15% of it. What we talked about here today in this video scratches the surface. If you look back through Lunduke Journal reporting of the last 2 years relating to Firefox and Mozilla, oh my word, some of those stories are insane. What's happening with that company, with that foundation, is bonkers. It's dark. It's shady. It's, dare I say, sinister. And I feel like I've been alone on the hill screaming about it. But finally, we're getting some traction. Finally, after being the one outlet that's been reporting on this, truly, we're finally getting some other people to do the same and finally looking at Mozilla in a truly critical light, beyond just, the market share is not doing too good. And like, that's the extent of the criticism from most people. But we're finally getting the real criticism thanks to the term of use story. Mozilla finally pushed it too far. But there's so much left to this story. There's so much left to be covered. And I'm going to say this flat out. To all the journalists out there, and I know you're watching, to all the YouTubers and podcasters, even the ones who hate me, and I know there's a lot of you that hate watch the Lunduke Journal, go back and look through the last stories, just the ones I referenced here in today's show. Grab those news stories and run with it. You don't even have to give me credit. Run with it. Do your own research into it. You know, you don't have to just screenshot my videos and quote me without telling people who it was who said it. You can just come up with your own, but take all that, run with it, and talk to people about it, because all of this information The rebranding as a global crew of activists. The taking of U.S. taxpayer dollars, but being really secretive about how it's used. The internal power struggles, the lawsuits, the climate justice using AI, feminist, decolonial, whatever things. Like you start piling all that together, and this story gets weird. And the censorship and the privacy invading portions of the story suddenly become far more intense than even it is already. I advise you all to ask more questions. And here, you know what? My inbox is open. If any of you want sources, contact me. I can't divulge certain things, like certain identities of some whistleblowers, but otherwise I'm an open book. I'll share all of the stuff I've got with other journalists so that you can report on it as well. Because let's get this out there. Let's start talking about this. And it should also be noted that other than, where's that screenshot again? Other than the one clearly mistaken moment when Mozilla accidentally shared that Google spreadsheet with me for just a second, that Mozilla has refused to comment on any of this, at least in any real way, to anyone who's really critical. There's been one or two comments from people within Mozilla inside of like bug tracking on GitHub or on their blogs over at the Mozilla Foundation, where they've said, oh, there's been some misunderstandings about our new terms of use. We have to have these terms of use in order to, have a web browser and stuff. We have to steal all your data and sell it to the advertising company, one of which we own, and use it to feed into our AI companies that we now own. And we're also activists and decolonial using AI. Like it's crazy. It's crazy, but the few responses that there are out there are just nonsense, are absolute nonsense. And Mozilla has not responded directly to me in any real way. I have been told, however, and I just want to say this. Let me see if I can pull this up here. On the taxpayer story, where Mozilla got $1 million grant from the National Science Foundation, so taxpayer money, I did manage to get a hold of one of the co-writers of the proposal. That co-writer verified to me that Mozilla is aware of my requests, but I have not gotten any information. No one, including that person, was willing to provide me with the proposal, which there should be no reason for Mozilla to hide that proposal from the public. It should be public if it was a good National Science Foundation-y public proposal for public funds. But they're avoiding getting that information to the public. But I have confirmed that they've received my request, but they have not responded to it. So there's that. I want to say flat out thank you to all the Lunduke Journal subscribers. Go to lunduke.com, where all the links are located, because you can watch the Lunduke Journal everywhere. And in fact, it's crazy where things really explode. Like this particular story, where the Firefox terms of use, millions of people see this story. The various posts around it, viewed millions of times over on X. That's where really all of the action for this story takes place. In fact, increasingly, I'm noticing when things truly explode, they're happening over on X. And so that's interesting. But if you want to watch and listen to all the shows, you can just do it via the podcast RSS link, or on Locals or Rumble, or shoot, even on Facebook or Patreon or Substack or wherever, Spotify, iTunes, I don't care. You can get the shows wherever you want. You can follow the Lunduke Journal wherever you are. We try our best to be there wherever you're at. But man, things sure did explode on X over the last 24 hours. Absolutely crazy. And great, because the story's getting out there. But thank you to all the subscribers who make it possible for me to do this work. Because you'll notice, we started this show, there was no ads, right? No beginning of the show, this show brought to you by Square. Like that didn't happen, right? The only point that during the entire show, when you got around to, oh, by the way, like and subscribe, or anything even closely resembling that, is this last 30 seconds here where I'm like, hey, here's a link. No advertisement dollars, no sponsorships from big tech, none of it. No foundation or tech company can tell the Lunduke Journal what to cover. And the results are, we go where the story is. And you can see that in what we talked about here today. Because of the Lunduke Journal subscribers, the stories we talked about today got covered. The Lunduke Journal did the breaking of the stories, the investigation of the stories, and the reporting of it, and nowhere else did. If the Lunduke Journal hadn't existed, if you hadn't subscribed to the Lunduke Journal, these stories would not have happened. The public simply would not have known about most of this stuff. So thank you. You made this possible. It's all thanks to you. And with that, Lunduke.com. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, nerds and nerdettes across the inner tubes, I do declare, end broadcast.